Hoi,
Is ek nou beter?
daar's hy. Ja, ek het sommer die live aangesit 8uur sodat die mense kan maar begin join. En dan wag ons net vir Marinette.
Sy het gesê sy's nou terug. Sy probeer ook net haar koneksie beter kry.
Gaan ons vanaand weer te vat.
Ja, ek hoop nie so nie. Dis crazy. Ek sê vir jou,
Hallo Marinette.
Hallo Marinette. Is dit
Ja, wanneer kan ons Starlink kry? Kan ons nie Starlink kry in Suid-Afrika nie?
Ek weet nie, ek sien nou so 'n rooi liggie daar bo in die hoek.
Yes, ons is live. Ja,
ons is live.
Maar daar's nog
Maar ek is nie met Starlink. Dis hoekom ek nou so mooi moet dink voor ek antwoord. Staan. Ons het begin kyk daarna want ons het nie eers fiber aan hierdie kant nie. So dit was definitief ons onderneming, maar ek dink nie dit is so eenvoudig op hierdie stadium nie. Ja.
Ja. Daar's baie uitdagings, maar ons oorkom hulle almal.
Is ons ready?
Ja, nee, ek is reg, ons is aan die gang. Ons gooi hom vanaand so met die mengels, nê, Engels en Afrikaans.
Engels en Afrikaans, dit is great. Ek dink ons Afrikaanse weers gaan dit nogal enjoy. So laat ons begin. Hello everybody. Welcome to Pawz People. Kom ons probeer dit in Afrikaans. Welkom almal. Hallo daar.
Ja. Hallo Darryl. Ek sien Darryl is hier. Dis altyd so lekker om dieselfde mense, as die mense so join. Yes, Antonette, hallo, Retha, Marinette. Sal ek so lank begin met die intro vir Marinette?
Ek dink so, kom ons vertel vir ons lesers wie kuier vanaand by ons.
Alright, Marinette Teeling, sy is the principal of Equine-Librium College, senior lecturer in Applied and Clinical Physiotherapy, BSc in Physiotherapy from Stellenbosch, Masters in Animal Physiotherapy from University of Queensland, and years spent building South Africa's first full degree in veterinary physiotherapy. Hallo Marinette, en welkom.
Hallo, baie dankie. Ek is baie excited om vanaand hier te wees. Ek moet sê, dis een van my eerste geselsies wat ek potensieel in Afrikaans gaan doen. Ek moet kyk of ek kan regkom in Afrikaans.
Jy kan nou maar gooi enige een waarmee jy gemaklik is.
Luister, ek dink ons kan regtig dit mengels maak. Ek dink nie iemand gaan ons kwaadlik neem nie en ek weet nie as julle soos ek is, ek dink in Engels meeste van die tyd as ek by werk kom, so as ek skielik Afrikaans iets moet doen, dan is ek sommer heeltemal omver gegooi. En hap
die breinkapasiteit is ook laag op hierdie stadium.
Is dit al Vrydag julle? Want dit voel vir my dit moet wees. So net so vinnig, jy het nou vinnig gesê Marinette is van Equine-Librium. Vertel ons Marinette van Equine-Librium. Want ek dink daar's baie van ons kykers wat nie actually weet nie, maar dit is dis nogal, ek dink dit is nogal 'n belangrike stukkie inligting daai.
So ek dink ons het twee groot gedeeltes aan Equine-Librium. So Equine-Librium is eintlik 'n college in Plettenberg Bay. And we're offering the first BSc veterinary physiotherapy degree. South Africa is also the first country where the profession has been promulgated. So once you've studied and you qualified, you have to register under Vet Council. So we're regulating the profession. Vet Council is regulating the profession so that we can protect our clients and our patients and our owners. So we're offering a BSc Vet Physio degree, and our master's degree has just been accredited. So we're doing our first intake now in August. Yeah, so so that's pretty exciting. And then closely connected to that, we obviously have our clinics, our vet physio clinics that's across the country. So currently we've got 19 therapists that are working for us. We've got 2 clinics down in Cape Town, 1 in PE, 1 in Plet, and then going up the coast to Durban, and then there's one in Joburg and Pretoria, and they're also closely helping us train the students and giving learning opportunities to the students too. So that's in a very quick nutshell, where our team is super passionate about vet physio and the training of it, and taking care of our animals, and putting out, I probably would say, the motivating for the best quality of life for a specific animal, whether that's an athlete or a geriatric dog or somebody's companion or a working dog. We're pretty passionate about it. So we like to kind of get involved in all different fields in it.
And just to clarify, although the name is Equine-Librium, you do work with dogs and cats as well.
Very much so, very much so. There's been some speculation that we should think of changing it slightly so that it's sharing for both sides. But the name has been around for so long that we're sometimes a little bit reluctant. So the main training is actually on horse, dog, and cat. But we also work in wildlife a little bit, and with Vet Council, when we set up the profession. The anatomy from dog, cat, and horse, you kind of pull over to the majority of wildlife that we'll kind of encounter. Not entirely birds, but we're trusting in the professional development of the person once they're qualified, that they'll only work on animals that they're familiar with. And we actually treat quite a few rabbits and guinea pigs and pet rats. And we've been quite involved with some of the penguin rescue down on our side. So it's a beautifully versatile profession. Yeah.
That's great. The other day when I was at the clinic, the bunny just left. It was very cute seeing my beagles didn't look cute, but anyway. So
yeah.
Listen, I just want to say a quick note for everybody that you're listening. Tonight is a general information session. It's not a diagnosis. Your own vet or physio knows your animal and keep them in the loop always. This is to give you information, so please know that this is not a diagnostic session, okay? Just the red tape, and make sure everybody's on the same page. So I'm going to just quickly fall in, and I'm switching to English now. I'll come back to the Afrikaans. You trained as a physiotherapist and then specialized in animal mobility. What actually made you move from and drew you into that to steer away from conventional physiotherapy?
So it's actually quite interesting, Rita. I never wanted to do humans. When I wanted to choose a career, I always wanted to go into animals. And there was a part of vet science itself that wasn't super drawing. And I was looking for a way to get into something closer related to animal physio. And at that point in time, the only option to officially qualify would have been to be a human physio and then to go on to a master's degree. So I went into human physio knowing that I wanted to go into animals. And I think that's probably why I'm so passionate about what we're doing at Equine-Librium now, because I think that's the case for a lot of people. They actually want to go in the animal direction. And prior to setting this up, and this has been a few years now, the only route was into human physio and then into animals. But now they can go directly. And now that we've done this, I actually realize how different the two fields actually are. There are some similarities, but understanding animals and your real patient and practicing and training on your patient type is very different. So so that's how I got there. It was always my passion to be, or my motivation. I wanted to end on the animal side. Yeah.
And obviously at that stage you couldn't go to the animal side in South Africa, so you had to go overseas and find somewhere that you can follow this dream of yours. So tell us a little bit about moving abroad and going to study abroad on realizing your dream.
So that was actually also quite interesting. Now, like, when I start talking about it, I realize I've been to quite a few different places because I've studied at Stellenbosch, my human degree. And then at that point in time, there were 2 opportunities to do a master's. And the one was in Australia and the other one was in the UK. But obviously with the South African rand, you kind of need to make up some capital before you can really go and study in a different country. So I went to work in Saudi Arabia for 2 years as a human physio. And at that point in time, it was really good earnings. So I kind of used that budget, and then I studied in Australia. So, and I can understand why quite a few people move to Australia, because it's quite, I think it's quite similar to what we have here. So I studied in Queensland at the University of Queensland, and it was an amazing experience. I wasn't there for a full 2 years. We did residential schools, so a lot of the work was theoretical online, and then I spent 2 blocks of 6 weeks in that period, or in that time 8 weeks in Australia, doing the practical component of what we needed to do. So it was quite interesting.
One last quick question from me. In plain layman's terms, normal jargon that our listeners can understand, what does a veterinary physiotherapist actually do? For those of our people that's never been to one, what do you guys do?
I think if I had to summarize it in 1 or 2 points, it would be to try and help an animal function and move as comfortably as possible within the context of what they're doing. So if you have a dog that's been diagnosed with something like hip dysplasia, we have a few tools and a few things that we get involved in making sure that they can function and live optimally. If you've got a working dog, we're expecting them, for example, to do agility. So we recognize the smaller things to kind of develop their muscles and their agility and their flexibility in a specific way. And the same going over onto the equine side. So when we've got athletes, we want to recognize within their context, how can we make them move more comfortably and perform better, even if it is a companion wanting to go and walk on the weekend with you, so that they can do that nice and comfortably. And we use lots of different tools. So we mainly use our hands. I think our hands is our best tool in helping us identify structures that are not working as well as they should. I think we've got a really good eye in noticing in posture and how a patient stands and how they move, where the areas of discomfort or dysfunction can be coming from. And then we've got a range of electrotherapy modalities like laser and magnetic fields therapy and the electric stimulation, so the ones that kind of contract muscles. And we've got loads of rehab tools, the fun, colorful things. So the balls and the different balance pads and the underwater treadmill. Yes. So the session normally consists of an evaluation where we ask lots of questions and we feel through lots of things, and then we identify a plan of where we want to go. And very broadly said, there's definitely a focus on addressing discomfort, like mild little bit of aches and pains and things that we need to identify, and then loosening up and setting up some form of exercise. Because if we only treat pain, we're not addressing the whole cycle. So only addressing symptoms, you're going to continually have potential dysfunction. So if we can incorporate this, our exercises, we can help try and break that cycle and see an improvement. And then I also think we like to empower owners, because usually the type of client that brings their animals to us is somebody that wants to be involved. So we try and get them involved as far as we possibly can with maybe some home-based exercises or things that they can change at home or improve at home to make it easier for the dog or the horse or the cat or the bunny, whichever one we're working.
That's great. Awesome.
Great stuff. Cool. All right, so I'll jump into what we're going to talk about, our chunky pets, and we do love the chunky ones. But there is a lot. Where's that line that we draw where it's not fun and healthy anymore, and where it's a real, genuine weight problem?
Are you asking?
I'm asking, yes.
I was wondering if you're asking the audience or if you're asking me.
No, I'm asking you.
It's actually quite interesting because I've delved into this topic quite a few times because a few years back, when you asked Google what is the biggest problem that we're seeing in canines, obesity came up so often. And I think we think about overweight as being extra weight on joints, and it makes it a little bit more challenging for dogs to move. We're specifically talking about dogs today. But there's a different component to it because adipose tissue or fatty tissue actually secrete hormones that creates a pro-inflammatory environment that affects joints specifically. I think most of our audience will probably know this, that in humans, when you have an overweight person, it's associated with hand osteoarthritis. And your hands aren't a weight-bearing surface. So it's got nothing to do with the extra weight that's on the hands. It's the actual inflammatory kind of setup in the body. So that line is pretty, I think it can become pretty gray. I also think for us as owners, very often it's awful because your dog can stare at you with lovely eyes, asking really nicely for that extra little bit of a treat or the extra scoop of food. And it's tough. It's tough for us because I look at them, I'm like, sure, you can have a piece of my steak. I love you. I want to give you my piece of steak.
Or the piece of bread.
Or the piece of bread or the piece of pizza. So yes, I think what is important is to develop our eye as an owner to be able to recognize when your dog is not as lean as they should be, and then to try and kind of move back to what is ideal weight and realize that there's unfortunately enough evidence that will suggest that we'll have them for a few extra years if they're lean. And if they're not, then maybe we will be cutting down on an extra 2 or 3 special years that we can have with them. And if we start looking at that, I think we'll get a little bit more motivated. So I also think our eye has changed. I think we've become so used to seeing slightly rounder dogs that what is actually supposed to be a nice lean dog to us is now looking underweight dog. So yeah,
that's quite common where people see a normal weight dog and then they say, oh, but your dog should eat, is underweight. Yeah, it's very interesting how we've become desensitized to what is the correct size.
I think what also happens, yeah, you can say it now.
So sorry, now you can answer first. I'm going to give hammer now with another question, so you can go.
I think the other thing that's also quite important to know as an owner, and I've done this many a times, is you get used to what you're scooping up. So I know my dog is supposed to have 150 grams of their food in the morning and 150 grams in the evening. And I kind of measure it with a spoon. So I lift up my spoon and I know the spoon is more or less 100 grams. So I do 1.5. But a week later, my 150 gram spoon that I used has suddenly become 300 grams because your eye just slowly starts loading a little bit extra because that spoon is so empty today. So I think it happens really quickly that your dog picks up a little bit of weight and then you haven't realized that, or you haven't realized that instead of feeding them to 250, you're actually now on 400 grams already. So I think that's also something that happens really quickly, unknowingly. Yeah.
Totally. I very often or daily tell clients that we need to don't necessarily take the weight of the pet in consideration, let's rather use the body conditioning score. So talk us through that. Walk us through how that works.
Yeah, definitely, Rita. And it's so important because a bulldog and a Saluki and a Ridgeback and a Lab is not the same. So we can't chuck them in a little compartment that says a Lab is supposed to weigh 32 kgs. It's not how it works. So very important. So the body condition score is out of 5. There's also one that we've used for horses that is out of 9, and that one has actually been validated against radiographs. So the 1 out of 9 is actually a little bit more robust, if I can put it like that. So a 1, for example, would be a dog that's super, super underweight, and then a 5 would be one that's obese, and 3, if we're working on the scale of 1 out of 5, would be the ideal dog. And we're looking at different things on the dog. So we would like to see a waistline. So when you get to the ribs, there needs to be a little bit of a waist going to the hindquarters. We also look at above their tail, because very often on the base of the tail, they develop a little bit of a fat pad, or that's a spot where they deposit fat. So there shouldn't, the tail should be nice and down into the tail. There shouldn't be a little extra lumpy piece there. We also look behind the scapulas, so behind the shoulder area. That's also a spot where they normally put down a little bit of fatty tissue, and we'd like to see a little bit of a tuck up. So even those elements, I'm going to talk about the ribs in a second, but even those elements are not always super objective, because a Saluki, for example's tuck up is, or a greyhound or a whippet, their tuck up is way higher than, for example, a dog or a Labrador. So we kind of need to take that into consideration. What I often teach owners at home is when you feel the ribs, you need to be able to palpate the ribs. And there's 3 different kind of places that you can touch ribs. So if you feel on your hand like this, if that is what your dog's ribs feel like, they're slightly overweight. Okay. If this is the normal feel, this is what your ribs should feel like, and this would be an underweight dog. So that's a I kind of feel a nice go-to for owners to feel over the rib deposits, and you shouldn't be pushing hard. You should just run your finger over that to kind of feel what that feels like. With that being said too, Rita, we obviously also work with quite a few dogs that have degenerative conditions, or maybe they've had a slip disc, or they've got some stifle joint issues or back issues, and then they change their posture. So they become quite front-ended. And in those dogs, we also need to adapt how we look at whether they're carrying a little bit of extra weight or not, because they develop a lot of muscle in front, which covers the ribs. So you can't use the ribs as a marker to see whether they're carrying extra weight or not. And if they're not strong in their stomach muscles, you'll also get a little bit of less of a tuck, because they're not so good at holding their core up. So I actually think it's sometimes a slightly more tricky to really evaluate whether your dog is where they should be or shouldn't be.
Thank you. That is a great. I use that hand one on a daily basis. And people funny when I start taking my hand and say, if you feel this, it's too skinny. If you feel this, it's too fat. Type of scenario. But that's been my go-to. That is actually for me the easiest way to explain it to people, especially when you're on a telephonic consultation, to talk about it that way, because people can visualize that quite clearly, as opposed to trying to explain it on a scorecard and things like that. So thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, Marinette, how much does a dog's weight need to change before it starts affecting their movement and their mobility?
So the current kind of evidence out there is very human based, and they talk about every 2 kilograms is 5 kilograms lighter on your joints and 20 kilograms lighter on your joints when you climb upstairs. So they haven't really done that kind of related studies in the dog industry yet, and I think it's because our dogs. We don't really have an average weight for a dog because we have so many different breeds. So I think it's a difficult one to pull back. So, for example, on a Labrador, 3 kilograms overweight is a problem. But 3 kilograms on a Jack Russell is a really big problem. So I think the moment you start going more than 10% of what your ideal body weight is. So if you're supposed to weigh 30 kilograms and you're on 33, you're starting to it's starting to become a problem. Yes, and it's also quite interesting because in the last few years they've pulled out some information that there are certain breeds and certain genetics within a breed that predisposes them a little bit to picking or holding weight. Let's put it that way. So. There's one study that I've pulled out to say that there's a certain group in the Labradors that if they live a slightly more sedentary life, they are more prone to storing fat faster. So that's also something interesting that has popped its eye up that maybe we should be looking at. And then obviously there's other problems that we have. So if you've got hypothyroidism or if there's Cushing's involved or those kind of things make it really challenging to keep the weight off dogs.
Okay. Because I think the main message I'm getting here is each dog, you need to look at the dog in front of you and then use your tools and your vet physio to then determine what are we at ideal weight, are we a little bit over or a little bit under. As an interesting question.
Because the other element to that is if I have a working border collie and I compare it to, for example, a Labrador that's more at home, sedentary. Maybe I should use two border collies. I've got one border collie that's a working border collie that's training 3 times a week and it's competing in agility. And I have a border collie that is a companion to a family. He does 5 walks a week. It's off lead, so he's getting exercise. The muscle composition between those 2 dogs are going to be very different, and we all know that muscle actually weighs more than fat. So the 2 dogs might genetically be exactly the same, but they're not going to weigh the same on a scale. Let's put it that way. I also think it's important to know when you have a dog that suffers from joint disease, they should actually weigh a little bit less. That they should be at 2.5 on a body condition score, because we're trying to protect their bones or their joints a little bit more than the average pet. So yes, very much a individual thing. Yeah.
It ties in nicely with Lindy, Mr. Miyagi, where she said that he was on ideal weight at he's a little Chihuahua on 3.2 kilograms, and then he dropped to 2.75 kilos to keep the impact on his joints and limbs to a bare minimum after his cruciate ligament rupture. So obviously those kind of things will impact as well and keep him on the lighter side.
For sure. And then we also need to be conscious that we're not, this is the fine line, that we're not underfeeding, because we're talking now about degenerative joint disease, but those guys really need a very good quality protein diet because they need to keep muscle. So we need to make sure that they're still getting the amino acids and the building blocks so that they can maintain muscle mass, and that we're not using that in an attempt to get them lighter. So there is a balance.
This is something that I really struggle with a lot of new clients with that, where they say the protein, it's too high in protein, and especially with older dogs, because there's this thing that is up in the air, less protein for older dogs because they cannot handle it in kidneys and so on. But when you're sitting with degenerative joint diseases and things like that, you actually need to give high quality protein in order to build muscle, because the better the muscle is the better it supports the injury in the end. And to get that concept through, it is really an education process to understand that this is where good quality protein really plays a huge role, where diet plays a role in weight management and joint disease. So there's a big connection for me between the two. But now, see, I hijack it always with something about food. That's what I do. I can't help it, guys.
But it's so important. It is so important because now I'm going to go on a different tangent, and I hope I'm not offending, but as owners, we, in the context of having dogs at home, we are close to solely responsible for what they're eating. We're the ones that's giving it to them. We're the ones deciding how much they get, how little they get, how many treats they get. So I think there's a big responsibility on our shoulders. And if we can see that connection and we can understand that we're actually empowered in how we can do it and how we can help them and set them up for success, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. So, yeah. So that education is super important.
I've got a saying that I've always used is, I can't control everything in life, but I can control what I put in my dog's food bowl. Exactly. And that is most probably for me the biggest control that I need in my little world, because of that. And I mean, I've got, my dogs are old, and like everybody knows already, they're old, they're 12 years, and some of them has got back issues and had back operations and cruciate issues, the things that crazy silly beagles do get. And I found that what they eat now for me is even more important now, to make sure that they actually build muscle all the time, because that can go away so quickly.
So we, when we train the students, I always talk about the 5 kind of principles of weight loss, and the majority of it is nutrition related, because they need to be on a specific diet that'll kind of encourage weight loss or assist with it. Let's put it that way. You can't give them pap and wors; it's not going to help. And then feeding them for where they need to be, so for their ideal weight. So if they currently weigh 50 kilograms and you want them on 40, you can't keep feeding them for a 50 kilogram dog. You kind of need to go down to where they need to be. And we need to consider their treats, what kind of treats we're giving them. And if they get a lot, if we do a lot of training, or if you want to spoil them because it's nice to do that, you just need to take it off the amount that their normal food allowance. The only other two, that's, well, the fourth one is that they need to eat more than 1 meal a day, so that we're kind of staggering it over the day. The only other one that is not nutrition related is that we want to add some form of exercise to help metabolic wise. So it's only one that's not actually kind of connected to what they're eating and how they're eating. So it's a pretty important part of weight loss, or keeping their weight at the optimal amount.
A last remark with regards to food and weight loss and joint usage, it's also not just about calories. It's the amount of calories. It is about the quality that you put back in for the muscles to rebuild. And like I always say, proteins are the building blocks of everything in your dog's body or your cat's body. And those little amino acids and everything that builds muscle, even though they're old, that still builds muscle. It still makes a difference in how they carry the weight, how they deal with the injury, etc.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I want to ask something else. So can you explain to us a little bit? So if we look at the weight joint disease connection, okay, what actually happens inside a joint when a dog carries extra weight? Why is fat tissue more than just an extra load?
So the adipose tissue actually secretes a hormone called leptin, and that is a pro-inflammatory cytokine that actually, when it comes close to it is absorbed in the synovial membrane that's around the joint, and that creates a pro-inflammatory cascade within the joint, and it predisposes to osteoarthritis. So osteoarthritis is obviously a big term for quite a few joint changes in a joint. So the cartilage will be damaged, and if the cartilage is damaged, it can't regenerate, and then you'll open up a little bit of the subchondral bone. So you've got exposed bone at the bottom, and that cycle itself kind of creates more of its cycle. So the more inflammation you have in a joint, and the more pro-inflammatory mediators you have in a joint, the worse the osteoarthritis will get. So yes, so it's basically offsetting osteoarthritis in a joint. I don't know if I can really say this. Maybe I can. So it'll have a similar effect as to you jumping off somewhere and actually damaging the joint from a mechanical point of view. Then there's an offset of inflammation in the joint. The fat tissue kind of does a similar type of thing that offsets that osteoarthritic kind of process, and we want to try and reverse that. So by losing the extra weight, you're removing that inflammatory response, or the pro-inflammatory kind of response, and then you're also minimizing the mechanical load on the joints, because you're physically lighter on the joint. Yeah, does it make sense?
So does that mean you can reverse it, the damage that's been done?
Have you lost me? Have I lost you?
No, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear us? I don't know if
she's a little bit pixelated.
Unfortunately, no. And that's the unfortunate.
No, you can go.
Are you good, Retha? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you. Are you back?
I think there's just a little bit of a delay.
Okay. So unfortunately, you can't reverse it. Once I think there's a certain amount of inflammation or changes.
Yeah, I think
I'm just going to check until the lag is reduced.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think it is. I can see I also get a lag on my side now. So sorry, guys. South Africa.
At least it's not just me
tonight. How glad are you for that? So, she's totally frozen now, so I'm not sure what comes through. So sometimes I'm not sure whether it's my side that's causing the technical issue. I think she's going to go out and come back again, because that worked. So it is. I think there's been quite a few interesting questions this side. So and I'd like Marinette to answer them. So we're going to just keep on having a chat about what I find very interesting is that it is everybody has the same questions about weight and how can their dogs lose weight, and it always comes back to whether you talk about joint disease, whether you talk about, it always comes back to nutrition. And for a long time I always think is it just me that wants to make everything about nutrition? but it is really.
There's this thing that they say, like, you can't exercise yourself into out of bad diet. So if you're eating bad food and you're eating too much, you can't exercise yourself out of it from a human point of view. So I'm assuming that's why food plays such a big part in maintenance of healthy weight with animals as well. Oh, Marinette,
You're back.
are you
Can
back?
you we totally know how it feels to be like that. It happens often.
I'm an expert. You can ask me anything. I think maybe just recap for us about what I asked about recovery once the dog or the animal has lost the weight, if that damage can be reversed. I think that's where we lost you.
Yeah, unfortunately, it depends on how much of the joint structure has been damaged. Let's put it that way. If you've just got a little bit of change to the synovial fluid and the inflammation, synovial fluid-wise itself, yes, then it's fine. But once you've got cartilage damage and subchondral bone, cartilage can't regenerate. I know this will probably be a topic for another day, but I know there's lots of other things like stem cell and PRP and all these other goodies that is trying to regenerate it. But the true reality is that the normal cartilage that a joint starts with, it's really difficult to get that type of cartilage back in your joint. So the sooner we can reverse it, the more likely it is that you can get as close as possible to a normal joint. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Okay.
So the magic sentence or the magic wand here is, please do not get your dogs to an overweight state.
Yes. Yes.
That is the
because
that's without taking injury as part of it. So we're taking injury out of it totally, just because but overweight dogs do get injured so much easier as well.
Yeah. For sure, because they lose muscle mass and they lose proprioception and everything else that goes around it, and they become weaker and more unable to kind of move the way they should. So they're definitely predisposed to injury. Yeah.
Sure.
So something else now you have got a dog that has been overweight. We get them into physio, we get them into aquatherapy to lose weight and get exercise that's kind of on the joints. What else can you do from a physiotherapy point of view when you are sitting, you've got the problem now, but now we want to change. We can't reverse it, but we want to try and make it as comfortable for the dog for future to help it assist it. What would be your advice there, or your course of treatment?
Yeah, so I mean that's where I think we're involved quite often. So is treating joint disease specifically. So I'm going to assume that we've addressed the weight loss and the owner is equipped and they know how they're going to manage that at home. I think exercise modification at home is a really important one, so that they're allowing the dog to exercise, but good choices of exercise, let's put it that way. So we'll have a long discussion with the owner on that. And then physio-wise, our lasers make a very big difference in treating inflammation and keeping inflammation at bay and addressing pain. We also use pulse magnetic field therapy, which has got a similar effect to laser through different pathways. And then hands-on treating muscle around the area, soft tissue around the area. Touch actually makes a really big difference in pain perception from an animal, well, from anyone's point of view, but it also softens up the tissue, elasticity, so that the muscle can actually contract the way they should. And then the last component would be exercise-based. And sometimes we do silly exercises where they're just standing on like a wobble cushion, and it feels like so inappropriate because we're trying to build muscle, but it's those little stabilizers around the joint that we really need to get to start working properly, so that their more global muscles can function properly. Because if you activate a moving muscle to try and stabilize a joint, they're not made to do that, and that's where you predispose them to injury. So the treatment take for the patient would be very much owner education, and then our treatments on the joint specifically to address pain and inflammation, and then recovery and strengthening of the muscles around that area.
Sure, yeah. And it's also appropriate exercise, because there's you're not going to take your overweight obese dog and go for a 5K run.
No, exactly.
So it needs to be
controlled. Yes. And the thing is, they need to exercise, and they actually need to exercise more frequently on a day. So in theory, they should be doing 3 sets of short little bits of exercise, which sometimes is practically difficult for owners to do. And yes, we want to go to the park and clip them off and let them run, but that's not appropriate necessarily in that current environment for that dog. And we're really lucky, and maybe not lucky, maybe we're unlucky, but a lot of our beaches are dog friendly. So it's quite a challenge, because I think owners, and I'm one of them, I love taking my dog to the beach. There's something about having them walk on a beach, meeting up with a friend, having some coffee. So there's a very big part of my quality kind of like encounter and appreciation of my dog is on the beach. And unfortunately, beach walking is probably not always the best for certain dogs. So yeah, but I do believe in the compromise. I do. If I have an owner that really enjoys something specific about their dog, then we pull back on something else. So if you really enjoy doing that, then let's change around a little bit some of your other exercise.
Yeah, no, I understand, because I've got ridgebacks, and there's nothing more beautiful than them running. But you know, and that makes my heart so happy when they run. But they, when they hurt and injured, and then I have to keep them on leash on the farm, and it's like, oh my goodness.
It's challenging.
It is. And then for the pet owners as well, often we say, oh, my dog's just getting old, he's a bit slower to get up and things like that. So what are signs to indicate that there's some joint discomfort there?
So definitely a reluctance to do the normal stuff that they normally enjoyed. I would say more in and around the house, because most dogs, if they know that a car drive is going to take them somewhere, they will.
You can go.
They will get to the car. That's a big outing for them. So the majority of them will just kind of, if you ask them, they will do that. So getting up. So they might be slower in getting up, or they've changed their way of getting up. So they'll go really broad based with the front legs and kind of pull up a little bit more. I mean, lameness is a pretty marked indicator, but very often we see subtle changes in lameness. So when a dog is standing on their feet, if the one foot is more splayed and the one's a little bit more up, it's insinuating I'm weight bearing more on one side. And that's also a subtle change. Or maybe if they used to sit nice and square with their back legs tucked underneath themselves, and suddenly they're preferring to kind of lean on the one bum, that would also be something. Or a bigger one would be if they're starting to lie down when they eat, if they prefer to not stand for such a long period. And then visual changes. I think it's important to try and recognize what especially their digits look like. If they're nice and neat, I normally talk about that they're chiseled, so you can see like the lines nicely, because very often if there's changes, or even if they've got a discomfort higher up, the foot position changes, or they'll get a little bit of a swelling on one area, or one toe will start showing in a different direction, or their toe nails will grow at a different speed. So some of the nails will be really long and others will be still short. So that's also something to look out for. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think those are the markers that I would keep an eye on.
Somewhere, I don't know if I heard it or I read it. That's correct me if I'm wrong. That also something that you can look at, say for instance, on your dog on the back, if the hair all of a sudden starts changing direction on growth and stuff like that. That is also a sign that you need to look at that at joints and spine and etc. etc. Is that correct? Did I dream it up or did I misunderstood it?
No, you definitely didn't, and you can see I'm smiling about it because they have kind of correlated that to changes in fascia. So that's another super interesting topic. But fascia is the kind of white tissue that kind of holds all your muscle together, and it sits underneath your skin. So fascia connects absolutely everything. And if you've got a little bit of fascial tightness somewhere that comes from something, it changes the direction of your coat. You're 100% right. So yeah, they're definitely linking that. So yeah, very true.
Cool.
Interesting.
That's great. That's amazing. That's such great, interesting things that you. So, what is the biggest myth about pet obesity or joint disease that you would like to bust tonight?
Oh goodness, that's a hectic one. You'll have to give me a few seconds. Let me think.
Sorry, had to make it a little bit more tricky.
Oh my goodness, Retha. Might need 10 seconds and not. I think,
deep.
And this might be a grayish myth, but I think that overweight or obesity and joint disease pretty much, not regardless how bad it is, but I think all of them are reversible to such a degree that you can still live a functional life with the right things that we bring to them. So I think very often when owners hear that their dog have hip dysplasia or they have elbow dysplasia, they kind of think this is the end of my dog. And enough around us now, other than surgery. I think surgery's got its place, and maybe other than lots of medication, I also think that's got its place. But I think we have so many tools to our use now that a diagnosis like hip dysplasia or elbow dysplasia in my 6 or 12-month-old dog really isn't the end of their life. I think that's probably one that I'd like to say is not true. With nutrition, our vet that's involved and a physio that's involved and an owner that's invested, I think we can give the majority of those animals a really good, sound, long quality of life. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. It is sometimes, I say to clients, I've actually got a client now that a 5-year-old dog has been diagnosed with hip dysplasia, quite bad. And in the last month, we've just changed diet, made it more cooling, trying to get the inflammation gone. And the vet said he's going to be on Rimadyl for the rest of his life, type of thing, and he needs to do that. And in the last month, she has not used Rimadyl because just through food, she's been managing inflammation and pain quite well. So I think for her, it would have been absolutely amazing if there was a physiotherapist unfortunately in her town, there is not. So it would have been amazing if you could do the laser and the actual other portions to bring that with as well. But yeah, it is not the end of the world. And I do think that is where I feel so strong about the fact that the role and the acknowledgement of the importance of a physiotherapist in your pet's life, whether it starts from a puppy, not injured, to just be getting that there's certain things that I think a physiotherapist can help owners by as preventative care a lot. And in this, it is so true, and it is so important to realize how you can manage this. And you can have a dog not on chronic meds, stuffing up its biome and things like that, but with a good diet, physiotherapy, the right exercise, and manage it perfectly well for many years to come.
Can I throw a clip in the bos?
Oei, net is hot. Kyk waar hy val. Ek het al weet nie ons gepraat.
Ja, vetpappies. Ons soek nie vetpappies nie.
Weet jy, dit is eintlik nogal interessant. En nou gaan ek op tone trap. For sure I'm going to step on toes. But there is a belief that if you have a slightly rounder puppy, it will create more spring of rib. So I also enjoy the show dog world. I show my dogs. I do agility. I do field trials, and there is definitely a belief that if they're heavier, you're going to create more of a wider, better spring of rib. And I don't know who came up with that, but it's definitely not true. So no, we really don't want puppies. I mean, we don't want fat dogs, but we really don't want fat puppies, and we really don't want fat dogs that have degenerative joint disease. We don't. And it's challenging because puppies grow, and I think if owners can also be kind to themselves and realize that sometimes you've just overfed a little bit, and just reverse it. Like, just be cognizant and kind of address it when you need to. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I think the sooner you address the overweight, the sooner you will stop the degeneration. Dan,
For sure.
Ja. So moenie wag nie.
Ja, die grootste triek is om vir puppy owners te laat verstaan, is dat ons wil nie 'n overweight puppy hê nie, maar ons wil ook nie 'n skinny bedieningspuppy hê nie, want jy wil ook nie dan met substance wees as 'n puppy siek word, want ek bedoel 'n puppy kry 'n bouts of diarrhea en is in 2 dae heeltemal 2 kilogram ligter. Jy wil hê dan met substance wees dat hulle dit hulle self kan deurtrek daaroor, maar ons wil nie 'n ronde vet puppy nie. En dit is my grootste ding is as mense my kontak van veral sekere spesifieke breeds en sê, ons wil hy moet groot word, hy moet groei en hy is nie so groot soos wat ek wil hê hy moet wees. Ek wil hy moet al 50 kg weeg. En dan dink ek net by myself is, please. En dit is so 'n belangrike education gedeelte vir puppy owners. Ek sê mos, almal wat 'n puppy kry, of hy hom adopt en of jy hom koop, jy moet eers 'n eksamen skryf en accredit word dat jy verstaan waarmee jy werk. Want baie mense is uninformed about this. En ek dink dit is die hele hoekom hierdie forum vir ons so belangrik is let's educate people about what they need to be aware of. En want baie mense weet nie van goed nie, nou hoor hulle ding hierson en dan drop daai penny en hulle besef, maar weet jy, dit is hoe ek andersins na dit kan kyk. So hierdie inligting is verskriklik belangrik.
En die ander ding eintlik, ek dink dit is nie altyd vir alle mense moontlik nie, maar dit sou goed wees as jy 'n ander hondepel het wat vir jou elke maand of elke 6 weke na jou honde kan kyk en sê, nee, weet jy wat, ek dink jou hond het 'n bietjie gewig opgetel of nie, hy het nie. Want partykeer mense het so 'n buiteoog nodig wat 'n slag vir jou kyk. Ons raak gewoond aan ons eie honde en jy sien dit nie altyd raak nie. So it's good to have like an accountability partner. Even if you sign it up with a physio and you ask them every 6 weeks if they can just kind of have a quick squiz to see, it makes it easier.
Ek sê altyd vir mense, steun net gou my video as jou hond buite speel. Veral pappies wat kom, dan hulle nou begin, hulle het 'n nuwe puppy gekry en as ons op Pawz People en dan sê ek elke 2 weke, veral in die begin, stuur my 'n video laat ek net kyk hoe lyk die puppy. En honesty is baie belangrik daarso, want dit is belangrik, want dit veral met, ek bedoel, selfs met toy breeds, is dit net so belangrik. Mense dink oor dat 'n toy breed nie so heavy is nie, maar jy moet in ag neem, ek bedoel, ons vat nou vir Mr. Miyagi. Ek meen 2.7 kg is tiny, it's minute, maar dit is belangrik want daai gewig op daai klein joints het 'n impak. Of jy met 'n 2.7 kg hond of 'n 80 kg hond werk, it is the same. Elke joint het sy impak relatief tot die grootte van daai boef.
Verseker.
Ja.
Antonette.
Ja, ons is nou al 'n uur en ek wil nog gesels.
Ja, ek wil nog gesels, maar ek dink daar's nog so paar takeaways wat jy vir ons kan vra dat net vir ons kan deel.
Ja, ek dink net miskien as jy 'n paar goed wat mense net vanaand kan wegvat, net kan vinnig opsom, maybe 1, 2, 3, wat hulle kan wegvat vanaand. Ek dink vir my een van die goed was, look at the dog in front of you and judge and evaluate their real body condition. En moenie jouself blind staar teen die fisiese gewig nie. Daai is nogal 'n, jy weet, party mense ek hoor dit baie, dan sê die mense, my hond weeg 50 kg en hy is dis net muscle. Ja, so. Ons kry dit baie by die reviews, ja.
That would definitely be one, is looking at the dog in context in front of you. I do think that it's good to educate your eye on what is actually normal. Trying to pick one or two things that you're looking on. The hand one is a nice one of measuring those. And then I think one thing that really helped me was to at least once every 2 weeks to actually weigh the food that I'm feeding, because I think that's one place where we go wrong quite quickly. And then to be kind to yourself, because if you feel like your love towards your dog is by feeding, that's fine, but then adapt how you're feeding, that you're still feeding within what they need. So treats are important. Choose good treats that could be part of their diet. I think those are probably the most important things that I think people need to do.
Okay, Marinette, en as jy dalk net vir ons luisteraars kan sê, waar kan hulle meer leer van Equine-Librium?
So op ons webwerf, www.equine-librium.co.za, so EQUINE-LIBRIUM. That's the actual website. We also do have a Facebook page, but the website's going to give all the contact details of the actual college and of the different physiotherapists and our different physiotherapy clinics too, and all the contact details are on there.
And you have physios in physical locations and then also mobile physios.
Exactly, yeah. So most of the physical locations will have physiotherapists that go out to homes, and yeah, so in all the different areas, yeah.
Cool. That's me done. Retha, het jy nog iets sê?
Ek ons gaan natuurlik alles op die wanneer ons die post die recording post van ons die links na jou website en alles neersit vir ons lesers en luisteraars. Ek dink dit was amazing geweest. Dit is selfs al is dit soos waarmee ek elke dag werk, is dit lekker om dit net uit 'n ander perspektief van 'n ander professionele persoon af te kry, en ek dink ook almal bewus te maak van kyk na die benefits wat verskillende wat service providers in die pet industrie vir jou kan bied. So baie dankie vir jou tyd. Ons waardeer dit regtig baie. Dit was lekker om jou hier te hê. En ja, ons sien uit na weer 'n geselsie, hopelik gou.
Lekker wees. Dit is lekker mense om mee te gesels.
Ja, en dan 'n ander ding is Marinette sal ook by die African Pet House wees. So asseblief girls, mense, luisteraars, as julle nog nie geboek het nie, koop julle kaartjies. Dit was min plekke oor. Julle gaan spyt wees. It is so worth it. It is so worth it. So as jy nog half op die fens gesit het, boek daai ticket.
Ja.
Ehm
En is om die
volgende
draai,
week-
nee.
Ja, dit is ek wil nie nou eers soveel dae daaroor nie. Ek gaan net nou kry ek 'n panic attack, man. So volgende week gaan ons 'n bietjie van 'n skip hê. So ons gaan nie volgende week sien nie, maar hou die social medias dop, want daar gaan 'n baie nice surprise wees oor dat julle nie ons live gaan sien nie, gaan julle daar wel 'n baie nice surprise hê wat baie great gaan wees en julle uit julle socks uit gaan bederf. So, baie dankie vir almal, dankie vir julle tyd, dankie dat julle saam met ons geluister het vanaand en hê 'n amazing week. Gee julle pets 'n lekker vet hug en cuddle in die koue winter en be well.
Dankie Marinette, dit was lekker om met jou te gesels.
Dankie julle, ook weer so.
Okay, tada, lekker aand. Bye.